Good evening and welcome to the Department of Toxic Substances Controls, or DTSC's meeting and hearing for the draft permit for the Chevron Products Company, Segundo Refinery. My name is Chin Xiao, and I'm a DTSC Public Participation Specialist. Presentation material. Presentation material is available at the DTSC website. Once you're there, select the Community Involvement tab. Meeting and hearing agenda. The public meeting, we will have an introductions, a permitting overview by Phil Bloom, the proposed permit by Ramesh Kafle, public involvement by Chin Xiao, and questions, followed by a 5-minute break, a public hearing, and then the next steps in closing. Meeting guidelines. By participating in this meeting, you understand that this meeting is being recorded. You may be muted for background noise. During the questions and comments, we will focus on topics related to today's presentations. Time allowed for questions and comments may be limited so that everyone can participate. Thank you for your patience and understanding. Project team. Chin Xiao, Public Participation Specialist, Office of Environmental Equity. Phil Bloom, Unit Chief, DTSC Hearing Officer. Ramesh Kafle, Senior Hazardous Substances Engineer, Project Manager. Armo Herabidian, Hazardous Substances Engineer, Project Manager. Rebecca DuPont, Supervising and Environmental Planner, CEQA. Marcia Rubin, Staff Services Manager 1, Office of Environmental Equity, and Elizabeth Leslie Gasaway, Public Information Officer, Office of Communications. I would like to introduce Unit Chief Phil Bloom. He will be giving an overview of the permitting process. Phil?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our meeting and hearing for the draft DTSC hazardous waste facility permit for the Chevron El Segundo facility. As Ken mentioned, I'm a supervising hazardous substances engineer with DTSC. I'm the unit chief for DTSC's permitting unit in Chatsworth. And so our unit is responsible for the permitting oversight for the Chevron facility. Next slide. So, DTSC has this authority to oversee hazardous waste facilities in California, including Chevron. And so you may be wondering, who is DTSC? Well, so DTSC is a state agency of the state of California. We're part of the California Environmental Protection Agency. And we're over 1,000 professional experts, including engineers and geologists and toxicologists and other dedicated professionals, public participation specialists, and so on. And I've been with DTSC for over 29 years now, and I can tell you that all the people in DTSC are committed to protect Californians and our environment. We're committed to engaging with the public, and you can learn a lot of great things about DTSC at our website. I urge everybody to please visit our website if you have any questions or would like to know more. There's the website on the screen here, and Armo, my coworker, is going to be pasting these websites in the chat for this presentation. So if you open up your chat bar, you'll be able to get an active link to our website. Next slide, please. DTSC has very carefully considered our duties and our authority, and we spent a lot of time evaluating what our mission is and so on. And I want to point out the Permitting Division's mission statement. The Permitting Division protects Californians and the environment from toxic harm by making timely, enforceable, and protective permit decisions for the operation of hazardous waste facilities in accordance with all applicable laws and sound science. And I can tell you from, again, my many years with DTSC and my more than 10 years now as the supervisor for DTSC's permitting unit in Chatsworth, that we do take this mission seriously, and we endeavor to make sure that all of the hazardous waste facilities are well regulated and that they operate in compliance with all the laws and regulations. And when there's gray areas, we apply sound science to making those, making our permitting decisions so that they can be operated safely. Next slide, please. So I'd like to explain a little bit of history about how we got to this place where we are now, how it is that there's a facility in El Segundo, the Chevron Refinery, that has hazardous waste management units, and that they're regulated by the state of California. So, of course, as our industrial society evolved and developed, we learned a lot of amazing industrial techniques to make all the great things that we make in our economy. And unfortunately, many of those things created hazardous waste. They created toxic substances that were not beneficial to be used for economic purposes. And so then they posed a disposal problem. Well, in the old days, 100 years ago or more, the people that created those wastes, they would dump them in the convenient places that they had been used to disposing of refuse and garbage throughout all time, right? So slowly but surely, as the volumes of the waste became more and often the hazards of those wastes became better known, we decided that we needed to have better ways to manage them. And so throughout the 40s and 50s and 60s, waste management techniques began to be developed, laws and regulations were imposed. But the state of California was the first entity that specifically identified hazardous waste as something that required special attention and heightened regulatory and legal definitions and structure. And so in 1972, we came up with the California Hazardous Waste Control Act. And this became, quite popular for regulating hazardous waste in California. And the U.S. EPA got into the act. Congress got into the act in 1976 when they passed the U.S. Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. We know that as RCRA. That is the law of the land with respect to regulating hazardous waste in the United States. In 1978, the Love Canal incident occurred, and a number of other high-profile hazardous waste incidents came on the public scene, became known to the public, and there was a lot of concern about the environment and hazardous waste disposal in particular. In 1991, so I should mention that EPA was created in 1970, and it was eventually became authorized to implement the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. And DTSC, before DTSC even existed, it was the Department of Health Services Hazardous Waste Management branch, and we eventually evolved into and became DTSC in 1991 when Cal EPA and DTSC were established. In 1992, EPA authorized DTSC to implement RCRA, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. And we also have our own state laws, which are equal to or more stringent than RCRA. Many things happened in the hazardous waste regulation arena between 1992 and 2013. But the reason I'm putting these dates on this slide is because in 2013, through the present, DTSC has embarked upon permitting process improvements. We've sought to evaluate our entire permitting program and implement process improvements throughout our entire program. So I just want to give you that little bit of background here, but there are many more details about DTSC and about our permitting program on the DTSC website. And here's the link right here. Armo, if you could please paste that into our chat section as well. Thank you. And next slide. So this is a very brief graphical presentation of our permitting process. It's kind of an overview. So there's two kinds of facilities that may seek a permit from DTSC. One is a brand new facility that a permittee, a prospective permittee is planning to open, and the other would be a currently permitted and active hazardous waste facility that seeks to renew its permit. Each permit is granted for a maximum of 10 years. So the DTSC permitting program, permitting division has authority to oversee this permitting. So they're one of those types of facilities. They're required to engage with DTSC prior to submitting a permit application. We call that the application phase. It includes having a meeting with the permittee or the prospective applicant, explaining to them what DTSC's expectations are, what laws and regulations would apply to their facility, and how the process works. We notify them that DTSC charges for the costs of permit review and approval, and because the taxpayers and the legislature have deemed that the permittees should pay the reasonable costs of securing a permit. So, and applicants then submit a permit consistent with how we advise them to do in the application phase. DTSC briefly reviews those permits and determines if in the big picture they're complete. They include all the parts. And if we do so, then we make a administrative approval, and then we review the permits in extensive detail for compliance with all the regulations and the health and safety code. That includes a checklist. We have a checklist of all the requirements, over 1,000 different items on the checklist. And then if we find deficiencies, we notify the applicant. We give them a list of deficiencies that they have to fix and send it back in. Eventually, if we determine that they have a draft, if they have a permit application that is meeting the requirements, we'll prepare a draft permit and we'll issue a draft decision to approve a permit. Now, on the other hand, if we determine that their permit application is not adequate and there's not much likelihood that they're going to ever be able to submit an adequate application, we'll make a decision to deny their. Either case, we'll issue that draft permit decision for public review and comment. It's this section of the process here. This meeting and this comment period are part of the public review portion of the permitting process. Everybody who wishes to can review the permit application, and the other associated documents, and provide comment to DTSC, including at the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. At the close of the comment period, DTSC, of course, will review and consider all of the comments received, evaluate whether any changes are required to the permit or whether the permit should be denied, and then we'll make a final permit decision. Slide, please. So part of the process that is included in the permit application review phase is the California Environmental Quality Act. So the California Environmental Quality Act, which we call CEQA for short, is a law that requires agencies or entities that make decisions in California that may have an adverse effect on the environment to consider those adverse effects. And if there are significant adverse effects, the law requires us to consider whether those effects could be eliminated or mitigated. And if so, then impose changes to a project such that the impacts will be reduced or completely eliminated, or their statement of overriding considerations. In order to do the environmental review of such a permit decision or a project, there's 4 different documents that an agency like DTSC could prepare. One is an exemption if we found that there's no chance that the project or the decision could have a significant impact on the environment. That's not the case, then often an initial study or a negative declaration would be prepared if it was found through the study that would be no significant impact. If a significant impact was identified with an initial study, but could be mitigated, then a mitigated negative declaration could be prepared. If it was deemed that there was a significant impact that would be caused by the project, then an environmental impact report would be required, particularly if significant impacts could not be avoided or mitigated by mitigation measures. Now, there had already been a prior environmental document, such as an initial study or an environmental impact report. There was a change to the project or a subsequent project, which did not pose additional significant impacts, then an addendum to the prior CEQA document could be prepared. And that is what we have determined is the appropriate document, in this case, with respect to the Chevron draft permit. Next slide, please. So with respect to CEQA activities for Chevron, in 2006, DTSC circulated a draft initial study and negative declaration, indicating that there was no significant adverse environmental impacts from the decision at that time. This was for the current effective permit. In 2007, DTSC adopted the final initial study and negative declaration. And so, as I mentioned earlier, for 2023, with respect to this draft permit decision, we have prepared an addendum to the final initial study and negative declaration. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned earlier, DTSC has opened a comment period for its decision to approve a draft permit or approve a draft permit for the Chevron hazardous waste facility. And the comment period will go through June 16th, 2023. And next slide, please. So this is a very brief schematic of how the comment period works. So during the comment period, anybody can review the draft permit and the associated documents that I described earlier, the permit application, the statement of basis, and so on, and provide comments to DTSC, members of the public, and applicants, various government agencies, and if they deem that they should advise DTSC of any issues that are of concern, they'll provide comments to DTSC. Now, once DTSC receives the comments, we will review them and consider them. At the close of the comment period, we will prepare a written response to comments, and we will determine, next slide, please. So we will determine after reviewing the comments, receive public comments as shown in this chart here. We'll review and consider the comments. And based on our knowledge of the permit application and the comments that we received on the draft permit, we'll make a permit decision. If we deemed that no new information was added that would cause us to change to the permit, we would issue the permit or or that would cause us to deny the permit, we would issue the permit as previously planned. On the other hand, if some of the comments brought to our attention issues or modifications that were necessary to comply with the law or regulations or to protect the public or the environment, we might make changes to the draft permit and then finalize it. On the other hand, if information was brought to our attention by the comments that the permit perhaps did not meet legal requirements and could not meet legal requirements, or for some other reason should deny, DTSC could deny the permit in its entirety, in which case, after making any of those decisions, we would issue a public notice, the decision, and written responses to the comments explaining how DTSC considered the comments and what our responses are. And in the event that they caused us to change the permit, we would explain that as well. Next slide. So once we make a final permit decision, we will issue written notice of the final permit decision. And the notice will be mailed to the applicant, each person who submitted written comments, those persons who have requested to be notified of the decision, as well as persons on DTSC's mandatory mailing list. So the notice will be placed in the repository. We have several repositories. One is at the El Segundo Library, and the other is at the DTSC Chatsworth Regional File Room. And we will post the notice on our Envirostore website. There's the address here, and Armo, if you could be so kind. Yeah, okay, posted into the chat, thank you. And then also finally, responses to the comments will be sent to those who submitted comments and will be posted on Envirostore. Okay, thank you so much. Next slide, please. So in the event that a person, whether a member of the public or the permittee or any of the agencies or entities that have interest in the permit, determine that they have a dispute with DTSC's decision, they may appeal a permit decision. Have to do so within 30 days of the notice of the permit decision. And how to do so? Well, so there are a few procedures that have to be followed. The instructions will be included in the notice of the permit decision. Includes completing standard appeal form ES 2301. ES is the Board of Environmental Safety. That's the board that regulates DTSC and is the appeal decision maker for the DTSC permit decision appeals. And you can find out more at the BES website, and Armo has pasted it into the chat. So much, Armo. Okay, next slide, please. So now I'd like to present our project manager for the DTSC draft permit for the Chevron Hazardous Waste Facility, Ramesh Kafle. Ramesh is a senior hazardous substances engineer in the permitting division out of the Chatsworth office. Thank you, Ramesh.
Thank you, Phil. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Ramesh Kafle, and I'm from DTSC's permitting division. I'm the assigned project manager for Hazardous Waste Facility permit of Chevron Products Company, El Segundo Refinery. Let's call it as Chevron for simplicity purpose. Next slide, please. Here is a brief overview of what I'll be covering in this segment. I'll be discussing the facility location and description, as well as facility's permitting history. Then I will go over the current operations and existing hazardous management unit. Lastly, we'll discuss some important highlights of the draft permit. Next slide, please. The Chevron facility is located at 324 West El Segundo Boulevard in the city of El Segundo. It is bordered on the west by Pacific Ocean, El Segundo Power LLP, and El Porto section of City of Manhattan Beach. On the east by Sepulveda Boulevard, on the north by El Segundo Boulevard, and on the south by Rosecrans Boulevard. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial view of Chevron Refinery. It occupies approximately 1 square miles of land, as shown in the highlighted yellow region. The two regions highlighted with blue boundaries are subject to DTSC permit. The blue boundaries are approximate, and these areas are much smaller compared to the rest of the refinery. Next slide, please. As for the facility's permitting history, a land treatment unit, also known as Landfarm, was operated from 1979 to 1986. The unit began closure in 1986, and in 1992, it was determined that this unit is subject to post-closure care requirements. Also, in 1981, Chevron facility was granted an interim status document by DTSC's predecessor, California Department of Health Services, for operations of storage in container, storage and treatment in tanks. In 1995, DTSC issued a hazardous waste operating permit and post-closure permit, which was renewed in 2007. In 2017, Chevron submitted a permit renewal application to renew their operating and post-closure permit, for which a draft permit has been prepared, and we are all here tonight to conduct public meeting and hearing. Next slide, please. Here are the current permitted facility operations. Chevron is currently permitted to conduct storage of hazardous waste in containers, storage and treatment of hazardous waste in tanks, and post-closure care, that is monitoring and maintenance activities of the landfarm unit. I'll describe these operations in more detail in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. As for their current permitted hazardous waste management units, they have 4. The Container Unit 1 and the PCB Storage Building Unit 7 are the 2 container management units. Tank Neutralization Treatment Unit 6 is the tank storage and treatment unit. The Landfarm Land Treatment Unit 11 is subject to post-closure care activities as noted earlier. Next slide, please. Now I'll be going in more details regarding individual permitted hazardous waste management units. The first unit is Container Unit, Unit 1. This unit has an authorized maximum storage capacity of 78,000 gallons. This unit is permitted to receive and store both RCRA and non-RCRA hazardous waste. This unit is subject to the air emission standards of Article 28 and 28.5 in Chapter 14 of Title 22 of California Code of Regulation, and also is equipped with certified secondary containment to contain any potential releases. Next slide, please. Next, we have Tank Neutralization Treatment Unit 6, which is adjacent to Unit 1. This unit has 2 processing tanks, T1 and T2, and they provide maximum storage capacity of 13,000 gallons. This unit is permitted to receive, store, and treat both RCRA and non-RCRA hazardous waste. This unit is subject to air emission standards of Article 28 and 28.5 in Chapter 14 of Title 22 of California Code of Regulations. This unit is also equipped with certified secondary containment to contain any potential releases. Next slide, please. Next, we have the PCB Storage Unit 7. This is a small building, which is essentially within a footprint of about 1,000 square feet. This unit has an authorized maximum storage capacity of 34,010 gallons and is authorized to manage hazardous waste containing less than 50 parts per million of PCBs. This unit is equipped with certified secondary containment to contain potential releases. Next slide, please. Last but not least, we have the Landfarm Land Treatment Unit 11, which is subject to post-closure care requirements. This unit consists of 2 areas covering an approximately about 10 acres. This unit includes groundwater monitoring wells, soil pore gas, pore liquid monitoring devices, as well as methane wells. Next slide, please. As for some of the important highlights regarding the draft permit document, this permit, if approved, will allow permittee to continue operation for another 10 years. It includes 4 existing permitted units, one of which is subject to post-closure care requirement. As for financial responsibility and assurance of the permit, the total closure cost estimate of about $2.8 million has been approved and is referenced in the draft permit. Additionally, a post-closure cost estimate of about $2.5 million has also been approved and noted in the draft permit. As for their total corrective action cost estimate, about $40 million have been approved and is also referenced in the draft permit. Last but not the least, the permit includes 17 general conditions that apply to all hazardous waste management facilities and a total 61 special conditions, 43 of which are unit-specific and 18 are facility-wide special conditions. That results in an enhanced permit, which provides more checks and verification points to ensure safe, protective, and accountable operations. Next slide, please. For complaints and concern, you can report excessive odors, smoke, dust, or other air contaminants to the Southern California Air Quality Management District. You can call 1-800-CAUGHT-SMOG, that is 1-800-288-7664, or email them at CAUGHT_SMOG@aqmd.gov, or use online complaint system as shown in the screen and also in the chat. If you need more information, please visit their website for Southern California Air Quality Management District. The information is also shared on the screen. Also, you may contact Chevron at 24-hour hotline at 1-310-615-5342 and the website on the screen. And with that, I will hand it over to Chin Xiao, who will facilitate the question and answer session of this presentation.
Thank you, Ramesh. We will now start the questions and answers portion of tonight's meeting. Question and answers instructions. For Zoom audio, use the raise hand feature and you will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn. For the phone audio, press *9 to join the phone queue. The facilitator will say the 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. Press *6 to unmute yourself. Text only. Use the Q&A feature to have your question read by the facilitator. We will listen carefully and do our best to answer your questions in this section. Answers will not appear in the response to comments documents. If you want a written response to your comment, you must make it later during the hearing. So give it a moment to see if there's any questions for this section of the public meeting.
We have none.
All right, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has had a nice break and had a chance to return to their computer. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I am Phil Bloom. I'm the unit chief for DTSC's permitting division unit in Chatsworth. I'll be the hearing officer for tonight's hearing portion of the meeting. And so, for the record, Today is June 7th, 2023. It is 6:45 p.m. This hearing is part of the public comment period for the draft permit for DTSC's decision to approve the draft permit that for the comment period that began on April 27th, 2023, and will conclude on June 16th, 2023. As mentioned earlier, DTSC will be accepting written comments during the comment period and will accept the written and verbal comments submitted at tonight's meeting and hearing. During this hearing, DTSC will receive verbal comments on the draft permit and the permit application. We are recording this hearing and the comments for the record. We will not be responding to the verbal comments at this hearing. We will consider them when making the permit decision, and we will prepare written responses to the comments, which we will provide to the commenters and the applicant when we issue the permit decision. Making a comment, please make sure to speak loudly and clearly. Be sure to state and spell your name. And if you wish to receive a copy of the responses to the comments, make sure to provide your name and address or email address during your comment so that we can make sure to get you responses to comments. To ensure that everyone who wishes to make a comment has an opportunity to speak, request that commenters hold their comments to 3 minutes. If there is additional time remaining during the comment portion of the hearing, we will allow for commenters to make additional comments. Mr. Shao, will you please explain the instructions and the process for making for commenting during the public hearing? Next slide.
Of course. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
For public hearing comments, here are the instructions. Zoom audio, use the raise hand feature and you will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn. For phone audio, press *9 to join the phone queue. The facilitator will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. Press *6 to unmute your line. For text only, use the Q&A feature to have your comment read by the facilitator. Hearing comments will be answered in the response to comment document accompanying the final permit approval. So we'll stay here and see if there's any comments coming in.
So yes, if you wish to submit a comment, please follow the instructions on the screen and we will be happy to hear your comments.
So far, no comments are coming in. I'll give it 1 more minute. So how to submit a public comment? You may submit a written comment as follows. By mail, send it to Ramesh Kafle, Project Manager at the DTSC Chatsworth Regional Office. Address is 9211 Oakdale Avenue, Chatsworth, California, 91311, or by email to rameshwar.kafle@dtsc.ca.gov. All comments must be received by June 16, 2023.
So Shin, may I just ask to go back to slide 38?
Sure.
Armo has diligently noted that we actually must close the hearing. And so I will say a few words to close our hearing, if I may.
Sure.
So having heard no comments and received no comments in the Q&A section of the Zoom call, I'm going to say that this hearing for the Segundo for Chevron El Segundo Hazardous Waste Facility decision to approve the draft permit is hereby closed, and the time is now 6:52 p.m. on June 8th, 2023. So thank you very much, everybody, for participating in the. Okay, hold on. I see now have now just gotten comment. Okay, so.
Okay. So we have
a question from Kimberly Crandall. So Kimberly, You seem to have missed the question section of tonight's meeting. Can you respond? Can you let us know, do you just have a question that you'd like an answer for right now, or do you wish to give us a comment that we will then answer during the response to comments? We'll give you a minute to reply to that. Okay, so really, I'm not getting anything more from you. Okay, so we'll take your comments as comments. We'll respond to them in the written response to comments after the close of the comment period. And then that'd be great. Thank you, Kimberly. Appreciate it. Now, I'm gonna, since it seems like maybe people are having a little bit of a hard time getting their comments in, can we just hold it open for another few minutes? Give anybody else a chance who wants to make a comment, please make your comments before we officially close the comment period.
Sure. Since we're officially in the hearing portion of this meeting, we are not answering questions. We are just taking comments, and we will respond in the respond to comments form. So Kimberly will get your information and we will respond formally.
Yes, Kimberly, it would be helpful if you include in your comment your email address or your mailing address, and we can get you our response to comments.
So we'll give it a few more minutes then for anybody who would like to submit a formal comment during this hearing.
Right. And, it's not required to give us the address or the email address. Our PPS says that we have your email addresses in their registration form, so we'll make sure to match your email address with your comment. Yeah, and also it's not required to give us your email address or address to lodge a comment. Feel free to give us comments if you wish anonymously, and we'll prepare written responses and we'll put them on our DTSC EnviroStore webpage associated with this permit decision with the facility, as well as at the repositories. And also anybody that wishes to make a comment but does not wish to do it during this hearing can email comments to Ramesh Kafle. His email address is here on the screen, rameshkafle@dtsc.ca.gov. Rameshwar.kafle. Armo, if you'd be so kind as to paste that into the chat as well. Okay, great. And Kimberly, her email address in there. Okay, one more minute. If anybody else wishes to make a comment, we're going to have one more minute and then we'll wrap this up if we don't get comments.
So I'll take it back to the screen where you can either raise your hand.
Yeah.
Or if you're on the phone, press *9. And if you would like to text in or call or write in your comment, use the Q&A feature.
Okay. I am hearing no further comments, so minute is up. Or one of our participants notified me. Thank you. So yes, minute is up. We're going to conclude tonight's hearing for the DTSC's permit decision for the Chevron El Segundo draft permit to approve the permit. So I misstated earlier, it is actually June 7th, 2023. The time is now 6:58 p.m. and the hearing is now closed. Chen, if you can provide the next slide. Okay, there we go.
Perfect. Thank you, Phil. So comment period reminders. The public comment period was from April 27, 2023, and will end June 16, 2023. Information regarding DTSC, the Chevron facility, the draft permit, the permit application can be found at the following two repositories. One is at the El Segundo Public Library, and the address and phone number is on your screen. The second one is at the DTSC Chatsworth Regional Office, and the address and phone number is also on your screen. For the regional office, please call the 818-717-6500 number to make an appointment before showing up at the office. The DTSC's website is on the screen, and you can go there for all of the documents as well to read online. I would like to go ahead and close this meeting. Thank you for joining us this evening. We hope you found the presentation to be informative. Feel free to contact us at any time. Thank you and good night.